All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and kick off the show here. Folks are still trickling in and will continue to trickle in, but we want to be mindful of everyone's time. But welcome to this morning's eTruck Community First Technology Advisory Committee meeting on this fine May 9th. We have a great discussion and program for today. Let's go ahead and just quickly review what we're going to cover today. After our introductions, we have a presentation from our guest speaker over at Lacey that's going to be talking about charging blueprint along the 710 corridor. And then we're going to get into project and CTAC overview, some overall project updates, some exciting ACT Expo highlights from this conference that took place last week that our team attended, and we're happy to share what we saw and experienced, as well as a wonderful presentation or discussion on resiliency. And so as a reminder, this presentation, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to everyone in attendance or that couldn't join us via email, but we'll also be posting it on the eTruck website following the meeting as well. With that, let's kick it off to some team introductions. So I'm Giovanni Hernandez, Clean Mobility Program Manager with Grid Alternatives of Greater Los Angeles. And I'll kick it over to my colleague, Stella.
Good morning, everyone. Stella Ursua, Senior Programs and Partnership Manager here at the LA office for Grid Alternatives. And I'll hand it over to our CalSTART team.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Swanchi. I'm a project manager here at CalSTART. Thank you for everyone for attending, and really excited to have this wonderful discussion with you all. I'll pass it on to Michael.
Hi, thanks, Tuan. Thanks, everyone. Michael Joseph, Lead Project Manager, Commercial ZEP-Core Development at CalSTART.
And let's see, I think that's it from CalSTART. How about EPRI?
Good morning, everyone. Kristen Bush from EPRI, Engineer Scientist 2 with the Electric Transportation team.
And I think Nathan just joined us, if Nate wants to introduce himself real quick.
I'm Nate Fernandez, Lead Technical Project Manager on the Clean Fuels and Infrastructure team here at CalSTART.
And lastly, if Yoremi and Giovanna could introduce themselves as well.
Hello, everyone. I am Yoremi Funes, working with Grid Alternatives. I'm an intern here, so it's really nice to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Giovanna Escamilla from CalSTART. I'm an project management intern in innovative infrastructure. So nice to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you all. Ms. Stella?
Yes, so thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you all joining us again. We have a great opportunity to hear from one of our colleagues over at Lacey about a project, research project that they've been working on. If we can go to the next slide, I'll just give some real quick background on Mr. Jack Symington, who's the Senior Program Manager Transportation at Lacey. He is focused on the goods movement, planning and projects, and developing the next generation of pilot projects to bring heavy-duty trucking closer to a zero-emission future. Previously, Jack worked for BYD, Build Your Own Dreams, managing various CARB and CEC demonstration projects. And so we're very thrilled to have Jack on the call today. He has a limited amount of time that he can be with us today, but we're very thankful, Jack, that you're joining us. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me, Stella, and Grid Alternatives. Happy to be back, see some familiar faces. So glad I'm able to share this project that we've been working on. Let me bring up the slideshow. Looks good, yeah. Very nice. So I'll give a little bit of background on Lacey, the Transportation Electrification Partnership, and then the overview of this project. I'll get into a little bit more of the mechanics of what we did, how we did it, who we worked with, and then jump into some of the takeaways and hopefully next implementation steps. So Lacey convenes the Transportation Electrification Partnership. It is about 30 different entities, public and private sector, all looking to advance electrification before the Olympics come to the Los Angeles region in 2028. We have a top level goal of reducing emissions from transportation 25% further than was even laid out in the Paris Climate Accords. And a large part of emissions, certainly in Southern California, are the drayage trucks and heavy duty trucks coming in and out of the Port of LA and Long Beach and going into Inland Empire. And so from an early point in the partnership, we identified the need to get infrastructure into the ground to support these drayage trucks. We have a top level goal of getting to 40% of the active drayage fleet by 2028, which is somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 trucks, depending on how you count it. So a lot of work to do, and figuring out where to put that infrastructure around the ports is a big part of that. So we received a California Energy Commission medium and heavy duty ZEV infrastructure blueprint grant to look at the entire 710 corridor and implement a selection framework that took into account existing drayage truck traffic, existing capacities on the grids and their location, and then have a gating input of community priorities for understanding where folks want to see some of this infrastructure in place. Certainly, land use decisions around goods movement in the 710 have burdened a lot of communities with pollution and truck traffic, safety concerns. And so as we transition away into a zero emission future, we want to make sure that that infrastructure installation and that funding is still supportive of the community's desires. So it was about an 18-month process or so from approval to finally completing the blueprint at the end of March. And I'll get into it at a later slide, but some of the partners who we worked with are down here on the bottom of the screen. So here are kind of the top questions that we wanted to answer. There's an immediacy component to it. Battery electric drayage especially can work today. The technology is ready. And so what facilities can support that infrastructure for operations today? What does the community want to see? Where do they want the investment to go? Business models between electrification and AB5 and advanced clean fleets rules that are really pushing for electrification. Are the business models for charging infrastructure going to be the exact same as for combustion fuels? How does the relationship between the energy service provider, the landlord, the tenant of the facility, and the fleet interact? We really wanted to get at those questions. The final step of the blueprint was understanding the entire scale of capital investment needed. What is this going to cost the public and private sector combined? What does that split look like between public and private sector, at least in the next 4 or 5 years for investment? And then finally, like all the other Energy Commission blueprints, there is a goal to have the process be replicable. And we do think that this framework that we went through can be copied at other intermodal areas and other logistics heavy communities throughout California and the country. So we're happy to be sharing it with others to prove that out. So here is the overview kind of from left to right of how we executed this project. And some of the partners up here are folks who received some funding. There were subcontractors to us on the grant. And then where it says supporters, it was a more informal relationship. They provided a letter of support. We had a few meetings with them where we were able to gain some insights. And yeah, so the I'm about to dig into each of these a little deeper here, but wanted to provide a high level overview. So we started with truck charging opportunity mapping. These are the results here, and so I'll leave them up, but I'll talk through it, a little bit of background of how we got to here. We worked with a telematics provider called GeoStamp, which had about 2,000 trucks that they provided GPS telematics data to, almost the entirety of which are drayage trucks that call on the port of LA and Long Beach. And with the 8 months worth of data for 2,000 trucks, where they send a GPS ping every about 10 seconds or so, we were able to determine where a truck was stationary, defined as the same GPS location for pings, either on the right side within a 30-minute window, or for at least a 30-minute window, rather, and then on the left side for at least a 3-hour window. So with these timestamped GPS pings, we could tell if trucks, weren't moving, or if they turned off the ignition and then turned it on a half hour or 3 hours later. And so on the left, you'll see the heat map of the most common locations for where a truck was stationary for at least 3 hours at any point during the day. On the right, you'll see where trucks were stationary for at least 30 minutes at any point during the day. As the on the right, as the color gets more green, that's a more common location. And then on the left, as you go from blue and get more red into orange and yellow, that was a more common location for trucks to be parking for at least 3 hours. And you can see that there's a far greater diversity of locations in the corridor for where trucks are stationary for at least 3 hours, and far less diversity in where trucks are parking, for 3+ hours, likely overnight, or for taking an entire shift off. And this is, in our estimation, a result of the fact that truck parking in the corridor is just less common because the land is a little bit more expensive, and it would rather be used as a warehouse or a transloading facility. Trucks often might park in the Inland Empire overnight, and then come in and maybe spend a half hour or so at warehouses, especially you can see along Alameda Street, former State Route 47, and kind of the Carson, Compton, Rancho Dominguez area. And then additionally out on the right by Norwalk and Downey. So here's a little zoom in so you can see actually even on the right location of on the top of that picture, you can see that's a location where trucks are stationed for more than 3 hours a day, and then throughout the State Route 47 corridor, you have a lot of facilities where trucks are stationary for at least 3 hours. The other big insight was there's a lot more opportunity closer to the ports than close to the East LA rail yards and a warehousing facility up there. We think this is just a fact of the density of warehouses in this State Route 47 Alameda Street corridor, and the ability for drayage trucks to make many more turns from the port to Wilmington comparatively than from the ports all the way up to Commerce. So this was the first step that we had in figuring out, right, where can trucks charge? Where are they going to be where they could get either an opportunity charge or an overnight charge? Because forcing drayage operations to change too drastically, could have some unforeseen consequences. So we do need to go to where the trucks are to some degree. The next was a grid capacity analysis. So we used resources from both LADWP and Edison to understand both the location of grid circuits and the capacities on those circuits, knowing that a lot of depots are potentially going to need multiple megawatts of electricity if you're getting upwards of 15, 20 trucks at one location charging at the same time. For LADWP, we were able to get the locations of their 34.5 thousand volt distribution system. So LADWP has what they actually call their sub-transmission lines, which operate at 34.5 thousand volts. And they have their distribution system, which operates at 4.8 thousand volts. In conversations with DWP, they made it clear that if you're trying to bring multiple megawatts of power, you're going to need to go off of that higher voltage line just because it has a greater capacity to distribute energy. And so on the left here, you have a photo of the locations of those 34.5 thousand lines in the study area. Blue means that it's an underground cable. Green means that it's an overhead conductor. And then on the right here is a little zoomed in, so you can even see the specific streets that the high voltage system is operating on. Here is a similar map with a little more detail, though, from Southern California Edison. As an investor-owned utility, they are required by the Public Utility Commission to make public information about capacities on certain circuits and substations. And so here on the left, again, is an overview of the entire region that we looked at. And as the lines get darker and thicker, those are circuits that have more estimated available capacity. The maps are very useful. They are retrospective, I guess you'd say. So they only take into account capacities at a certain date. And if you're looking after that date, there might have been some other interconnections that have reduced the amount of available capacity. So you're kind of looking at capacities that were available, 6 or 8 months ago, which is still good. Not certainly perfect, but they update it every year about. So you do have a good sense of where there is capacity. So here is a map essentially of that same SR47 region with both grid capacities and truck locations or truck charging locations. And so you can see where there's overlap between a grid with at least 5 megawatts or at least 8 megawatts capacity and a frequency of trucks stopped for a half an hour. And really interesting to see the overlap here. We will say some of the other findings that we'll have. I'll go back one slide briefly. On the left map here, you can see that a lot of the circuits with ample grid capacity are west of 710, especially in the Carson and Compton region, up by Vernon, and then a little bit maybe even in the Southgate region. Comparatively, far less available grid capacity as you move east of the 710. So we then provided both of those two maps on an online resource that I can make available to folks on this call as well, to CHAJ, which was the Community or Coalition for Environmental Health and Justice. We coordinated really through East Yard Community for Environmental Justice. Couldn't have done this work without Laura and Jocelyn Del Reo. But they also worked with Communities for a Better Environment, and Long Beach Alliance for Children with Asthma had a big part in, going out to the communities, sharing these resources that we have, talking to community members about the project and about, where their concerns for how infrastructure could be sited, where they would like to see it first. There's not only let's put infrastructure in a place where it's not going to draw truck traffic through a residential area and through community and pose safety issues, but maybe there is a large facility that the truck routes don't go through the residential neighborhoods on the way to and from that facility, but it's still close to a school or close to a hospital or senior living center. And that's a facility that they would want to see electrified sooner rather than later, given the adjacent sensitive receptors. So these were the 14, I believe, facilities that were chosen as high priorities for the communities. They varied. They were between warehouses, fleet yards, existing gas stations, or existing private depots. And the next step from here was to conduct very targeted outreach to these facilities and then get 4 that we thought were a good candidate for electrification in the near term. You know, they had thought about electrification, they wanted to do it. You know, we came across some that were less interested, and so you know, that happens. But we were able to get 4 for an in-depth site assessment and operating expense business model evaluation with our partners, BP Pulse. So this was an example of, you know, what one of those budgets, those CapEx budgets would look like. And I would note that this included only behind the meter work. So anything that's on the utility side of the meter wasn't contemplated. It certainly is a large cost, and I can get to that later, kind of how we estimated what those costs would be. But often, and especially in Southern California Edison's territory, a lot of those costs can be funded through California Edison's charge rated transport program, and even some of these behind the meter costs as well. So we were really just focused on, you know, from meter to plug costs. No DERs were included either. Here's a similar example of actually what the operating costs would look like. So we were able to see, given the data we had for where the trucks were and their locations, we could understand how many trucks could be likely to be charging, if they were to be a battery electric vehicle, could be likely to be charging at that location. And from that was able to build out a charging as a service model for, you know, what it would cost to per kilowatt hour to charge those trucks under a couple different scenarios you can see here. The max utilization is, you know, one where trucks are using it far more, so you don't have to amortize as much money per CapEx and OpEx. The last phase of this blueprint process was to estimate what it's going to, using those costs that we know on the CapEx side for model facilities. You know, how many chargers are we going to need throughout the 710 corridor to get to 40% by 2028 and 100% by 2035? And, you know, what's that cost per charger? How many separate depots are we going to need? So we used some assumptions that were actually built out in a Port of Long Beach charging study, a very good study that was released in September 2021, to kind of figure out what a sensible truck to charger ratio is going to be, and what some of the costs of that in front of the meter utility upgrades could be, depending on the size of the depot. And so here are our 2 tables that show our estimate for the amount of chargers needed just in the 710 corridor area to get to 40% ZE drayage by 2028 and 100% ZE drayage by 2035. And so you can see these numbers here are fairly large. You know, 280 million over the next 5 years, and then a total of 700 million over the next 12 years. I will say that this is still not all of the infrastructure investments that's needed, because on the right here, you'll see the area that we contemplated. We really were just focused on LA County. We didn't, you know, want to try to boil the ocean. But there's still about, the LA County infrastructure might only account for about 1/3 of all of the drayage truck infrastructure, given Riverside and San Bernardino County should need a lot as well. So you could easily triple these numbers to get to the total investment needed over the next 12 years, or 5 and 12 years. The last kind of takeaways were that, you know, on the financial side, public charging really requires public investment. Here on the left, you can see this expected utilization number is kind of an understanding of if this were to be treated as a fully public station over the next 5 years, how many trucks actually might come. And the max utilization is one where the amortized CapEx is a little lower because trucks are coming in and out. There's more control and there's a utilization floor for the operator. And if you have public charging that has to be privately funded for a return on investment, you end up almost doubling. You have them having to charge twice what the energy price is just for the private entity to recoup that investment, and you get dollars per kilowatt hour over 40 cents. And then that unfortunately is somewhat high. And we need to figure out a way to get that lower, and we can do that by having the public sector subsidize the CapEx to a greater degree. On the policy side, we think there's a massive need for utilities to invest in least regrets infrastructure. This picture in the middle here shows all the locations of SoCal Edison substations, and whether they have at least 20 megawatts capacity, in between 5 and 20, or less than 5. And the substations that have less than 5 are going to be oversubscribed in the next couple of years, and they're going to need upgrades. And the utilities should be allowed to, especially if those substations are near industrial areas. The utilities need to be able to start making these investments and upgrading the substations now in order to support the demand that's going to be there in 5 years, because the substation upgrade is a 3 to 5 year process minimum. And then on the right, on a geographic perspective, focus on this barbell approach, focus on charging by the ports and by these warehousing complex just outside of the ports. And then to a second degree, look up in the Vernon and Commerce area. Certainly want to prioritize closer to the port. So, and then how do we make this happen? It needs a lot of funding, certainly, but thankfully there are a lot of entities in California and in the federal government that are looking to do this. And so we built this kind of hypothetical funding stack to make this a reality. These aren't commitments from any of these entities, but given the amount of funding we know that they have, and the priorities that they have stated, and how they're looking to fund this infrastructure, these are all well within reach of becoming a reality. And so we're now looking to advocate for these entities to make these commitments really over the next 5 years to get to our 40% goal by 2028. So that is it for me. I'm happy to take questions. I know it's 10:30 now. I can stay another 5 minutes though for Q&A. Do you mind?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jack. That was fantastic. And there's so much there. I'm sure that the folks that are attending today, they have lots and lots of questions. They might not think about them right in this second, but I was thinking about this because this is the second time that I'm seeing this presentation. And, so you mentioned LADWP, you mentioned SCE. So what does collaboration between the two utilities need to look like, or what do they need to do to help make this work?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about collaboration between the two utilities. The Port of LA and LADWP certainly need to, whether it's an MOU or something between all the cargo handling equipment that they need to electrify, and then the truck equipment that's even on port property that could need to be electrified. There needs to be a tight alignment there. Between LADWP and Edison, there are a lot of regions where you can cross the street and you move from LADWP to Edison territory, and that's especially true in that Wilmington and on the southern part of that SR-47 corridor. And so I think that it would come down to a very kind of micro level of these are facilities that need to be electrified, and they'll be done by LADWP, and on the other side of the street, those are Edison facilities, and maybe those will come later, and so maybe there is more traffic on the LADWP side, and we can direct LADWP to make those investments while Edison is focusing elsewhere, and then they can come back. So I think there could be some cooperation between understanding, what upgrades, how to sequence upgrades geographically between the two.
Okay. Very good point. Thank you. We have Genevieve who has her hand up, and then a question in the chat from Yassi. So Genevieve, we have like 3 minutes left.
Thanks so much. This is an amazing presentation, and it's very informative. And I missed the first part, so forgive me for asking a question if you already answered it. But did you run these scenarios and places by any trucking companies or trucking operators or HTA or somebody?
Yeah, so we worked with HTA in the early stages on defining where what would constitute as a charging opportunity. Certainly given the space of technology today, a half an hour will only get you so much of a charge. It'll still be helpful, certainly. But ideally in 5 or 8 years, a half hour will do a lot more. And so we worked with them at the very early stage to define what it would make sense as a charging opportunity. And then, we pulled data from all those blue and red circles were truck telematic data from existing fleets that operate at the ports. And so, we didn't have necessarily one-on-one follow-up conversations with fleets, but we know their trucks are going there.
And Yassi, you had a question?
Yeah, hi everybody. I was just curious about if there are any V2G benefits and what you're studying with the blueprint.
Yeah, it's a great question. We weren't necessarily contemplating V2G benefits at this time, just because drayage it's not immediately obvious that drayage is a good vocation for V2G, just because they operate 2 shifts a day. They need as much energy as quickly as possible. And especially middle of the day, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to be sending energy back to the grid. There could be some overnight balancing opportunities with some smart charge management. But yeah, other vocations like school buses or regional haul, like your Vons or your Albertsons or Walmart, those are trucks that often are done for the day at around 4 o'clock and then don't start again until 6 the next morning. And so those are really ones where I personally see a better opportunity in the near term for V2G.
Good. Thank you. Jackie, Commissioner Badejo, you have a question.
Yes. Hey, Jack, always a pleasure. Great presentation. Boss Clean Air. And for the 4 businesses, I was just wondering what was the categories of businesses they were. I see different, like changes happening with zoning and things like that. So I was just trying to get an overview from you.
Yeah. No, that's a very fair question. So one of them was a private fleet depot in Compton. It would be mostly behind the fence charging for one fleet. Another one was actually a Prologis warehouse down in Long Beach. They have multiple tenants. They're basically a warehousing tenant, logistics tenant, and multiple different fleets might be coming in and out of that one. We then looked at one that would be pretty fully public down on port property in Wilmington. And so we were able to get, fully private depot, some sort of shared tenant logistics park depot, and then a fully public one. And then the last one was up in Southgate, which was just a storage yard. So a third-party fleet operator or a third-party yard operator that has maybe 2 or 3 clients that store containers or chassis or park trucks at the facility. And that was the 4th.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. And I know that you are strapped for time here, Jack. So we just all wanted to thank you for providing this a little synopsis of the presentation. I know it was there was much more involved here, but it is so impressive that you were able to get this done. And so Thank you so much for sharing this. I have a question for maybe the environmental justice groups. So, you know, if you can stay on, that's great. If not, then we completely understand, but thank you. Really appreciate
Yeah, I'd
it.
love to kind of stay on one more minute to hear
Okay.
the
Sure,
groups. I
sure.
might jump off video, but I'll be sure to, my contact information was right there, jack@lacy.org. And I'll be happy to follow up with Giovanni and send an actual copy of the full 70-page report for
Right on.
distribution.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack. Well, and I had a question for either Jocelyn or Amber, just on the engagement process with the surrounding communities. What did you find, you know, that really struck you? I mean, you know, were they concerned about, you know, trucks rolling through their neighborhoods? Were they excited about electric trucks? I mean, just kind of a real quick overview of what you found, if you don't mind. Y'all still there, Jocelyn or Amber? Oh, okay. So Jocelyn's having audio issues. She can share. We had community focus groups that really understood the need for these zero emission trucks because of the impacts. Great. Thank you, Jocelyn. Appreciate that. And we appreciate the work that you all put into this. There's a second comment. However, there was also an understanding that we didn't want unintended impacts like no displacement and no traffic. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know you were all instrumental in this report, so it was so great to see that East Yards, that CBE and Labaca were all involved in this effort. So thank you again. All right. Any other questions? If not, then we'll hand this over. I believe Giovanni is next. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're gonna slightly pivot to what we normally start with, right? To accommodate our guest speaker, Jack, who we want to thank once again for his wonderful work and presentation, who could only join us at the beginning of this meeting. And, you know, he has to head out for a prior commitment. So we want to thank him for his time. And so we slightly adjusted our agenda. So we're going to pivot to what we normally do in the beginning, just for any folks that are new to the space, to just kind of cover a little bit of the project overview and the CTAC goals, and then proceed with the rest of the content we have prepared for everyone. So I'll kick it over to Tuan for project overview.
Great, thank you, Giovanni. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of the e-truck project itself. So the purpose of the project is to create a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of the medium and heavy duty drayage vehicle market in key areas. And there are a couple of goals and objectives that accompanies this purpose. The first is to advance research, development, and demonstration activities that extend the delivery range of large weight class battery electric trucks, beginning with drayage operations. It's also to engage broad stakeholders with a community first approach and to use all of this input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities, such as pollution burden and impacted communities, and also stakeholders such as truck fleets, charging equipment and service providers, electric utilities, and planning agencies. And lastly, we also want to plan, design, and deploy innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for medium and heavy duty electric trucks, again, beginning with drayage trucks. And I'll pass it back to Giovanni.
All right, thank you, Tuan. So, and within this project, right, we've brought together different stakeholders to form this body, which is the Community First Technology Advisory Committee, CTAC for short, with the goal of using a community first engagement framework to ensure that pollution impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding the initiative. So that's exactly what this space is for, to discuss related topics, updates, and also get the input of our stakeholders like you all, and also plan for how we will also obtain community input in the future as we move forward with project activities, right? And so, and part of that work that we will be doing with the CTAC is, you know, putting out content collateral for community education. So there's different methods we've come up that we've also gotten ideas from other committee members in how to incorporate in the project moving forward to get that input and support, right, the equity and community engagement goals of this body. And again, to inform future project activities as well. So we greatly appreciate your time, your interest in these meetings, in this project, because it all contributes to the overall goals, objectives, and functions of this body and contribute to the success of this project. Next slide, please. Juan.
Great. Thank you, Giovanni. So I'm just going to provide you with an overall project update. So as you know, in the community engagement and workforce development task, we've developed several collaterals for dissemination, and the most recent one is a workforce development fact sheet. And attached to that fact sheet is a zero emission vehicle training program inventory, which is now available on our website. Pretty much lists all of the available ZEV training program that's available within California, and that list is being updated regularly. So I'll link the website in a little bit. And then next, we also have a CBO stipend opportunity. You all should have received an email announcement from Giovanni from last month, and pretty much we are providing a small stipend to CBOs to help us with the engagement activities, implementing the community engagement plan and also the workforce development plan. So we're planning to select 6 CBOs, and Giovanni will provide more information on the next slide about that. Next, we are hosting a webinar series called the Industry Partner Presentation, and we're planning to launch this in June 2023. Pretty much this webinar series will be an informative series where we'll be providing the CTAC and WEDAC members with just information about the industry itself, so that you are better informed and better prepared to be more engaged with the industry itself and the eTruck project. So we'll be sending out the official invite to this webinar series very soon. Next, we have some updates on the pilot site deployment. So we're working with Travel Center of America and MHX for our 2 pilot sites, and we're in the process of finalizing the site host agreement, and the deployment for these sites are aimed to be Q3 of 2024. And next, we have the Open Access Research and Development Testing Center, which is our lab. We're working with SCE for this, and the plans for the lab has been submitted to the city of Pomona, and we're awaiting approval from the city to begin construction. And we're also doing some website development, so dedicating a section of our website to house information on testing labs and how to access it, and also drafting operational procedure and testing application intake forms for that. And lastly, we have our technology transfer activities. We're planning to create an eTruck kind of introduction video, just providing overview of what this project is about, the benefits of it. And that video will be used to launch all of our eTruck social media platforms. So we'll have Instagram, a Facebook, a LinkedIn, and a YouTube. And we're planning to launch all that to further engage the public with our project. And that's all the updates. And I'll pass it on to Giovanni to go over the CBO stipend.
Awesome. Thank you, Tuan. So as Tuan alluded to, and as many of you probably received in your inbox email from me last month and a reminder email last week regarding this CBO stipend opportunity. As was alluded, you will be picking 3 different organizations for the CTAC and 3 different organizations for the WEDAC on the workforce development side of things for this stipend opportunity, right? And so, this is intended to be, just a easy partnership. We don't want to add more work for folks, right? But easy partnership to embed eTruck related updates and content outreach into what CBOs are already doing, right? Into existing activities and programming. So for example, we want it to be an easy lift if folks are already going to go table at some festival or community event, particularly in surrounding, the corridor region that we're targeting around the 710. It would be great to give out some eTruck related fact sheets or content, right, to the community and start educating and getting the word out about this project for folks. So that's like one easy example, right? Like one easy lift example of what we're thinking about, right? We would provide folks with content on social media to elevate on social media pages or also on eBlasts that different organizations are already doing. So we would provide some of that content or updates to, again, just already embed in your pages or, in your eBlast template or emails that are sent out to your stakeholders. Also, activities we're thinking about, but not limited to, right? Obviously, attendance at these meetings, the outreach to different stakeholders and partners, like I'm talking about, the promotion of these related events and updates, and providing us, with continuous feedback and input on the project and future project activities, right? And so we really want to encourage our CBO partners to apply, right? And so you see on screen some of the details there. The application period has opened up as of April 17th, and we'll keep that open for a couple more weeks here in May. We do have there May 19th. We'll see if we extend it by a week or two. We'll inform folks if we do that, but right now we do have the deadline at May 19th. With application review following up until the early part of June on June 2nd. And then we expect to make an announcement of the selected CBOs for the 3 selected CBOs on the CTAC and the 3 selected CBOs on the WEDAC by early June as well on June 7th. And the expected timeline that we're thinking about for this collaboration is from July 2023 to July 2024. Again, we really want to encourage folks to apply. I know there's a couple of partners missing on the call, but if you can think of some folks as well that come to this space, are part of this project that would be good, give them a little nudge to apply. Any questions that you all have, you want to talk offline about this, with any questions you have, please reach out to me, Stella, or Juan. Either of us would be happy to schedule some time and have a quick convo and provide more information if needed. And thank you to those that have already applied. And we look forward to reviewing applications once we close the application period. All right, so with that, I want to see if there's any questions first on this piece. Allot a minute or two here if there's any questions that anyone may have on this piece. And I saw a question that I got directly, if one org can apply for both opportunities. And I believe correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, but I believe we left it flexible and open for that to be an option, right? So if your organization is both like a CBO that does community engagement work, you're out there doing that kind of work, but you also have a workforce development component, sure, we left that flexible and open to not limit organizations to only pick one. If that applies, certainly to your CBO, we want to encourage that. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Hope that answers that question. Let me know if there's anything else. We do have another round of Q&A at the very end. And also you can reach out to us directly as well. So let's move forward with the next piece here that I am happy to also talk about is just the exciting ACT Expo that took place last week. For those unfamiliar with ACT Expo, right, we're talking about the Advanced Clean Transportation Expo that took place last week at the Anaheim Convention Center. And we had members of the team that were in attendance, right? And so, we had folks from CalStart there, from the grid team. So you see some pictures there that we took there that we wanted to share with you all and show you. And so, this was my first ACT Expo, as was for some of my colleagues as well. So it was really exciting. And so this is a conference for folks unfamiliar with ACT Expo that is focused really on targeting fleets and clean transportation stakeholders. That's really like who they're targeting. And so, their whole focus is on featuring today's most advanced fleet vehicles, fuels, and technologies, which include battery electric trucks, like the e-truck project, right? But they also have a focus on other zero emissions technologies as well, like hydrogen, et cetera, et cetera. And so, as part of the conference, they do have sessions and programming as well that covered different topics such as, insight into the transportation's ever-changing, regulations, what that regulatory landscape looks like, what they're foreseeing there, from also covering the vast funding opportunities that exist for fleets, right? So again, on the focus on fleets. And case studies from early adopter fleets as well, and what they've learned in their transition or their pilots of some of these new technologies, right? As well as covering opportunities and challenges for new technologies and fuels. Next slide, please. Another part of this expo is the technology showcase that takes place. And this is one of the big draws, right, for the ACT Expo. And might I add that there was like 12,000 plus registered attendees that showed up. This was a huge conference that has been growing over the years. And so, as you can see in some of the pictures, we have a plethora of pictures and videos we took, and we just unfortunately can't share everything and don't have the time to do so, but wanted to share some of the technology that we saw firsthand. So, you can see some of the different electric trucks there. This showcase is also one of the world's largest original equipment manufacturers and suppliers that are present, right, displaying their newest advanced vehicles, technologies, services that they provide for fleet and for the industry. So you had like over 275 plus exhibitors. There was over 185 plus, advanced low and zero emission commercial vehicles that were there that you can, inspect, that you can check out for yourself firsthand. And there was, exciting new vehicle unveilings and major live announcements from some of these manufacturers, as well as ride and drive events that was a part of this expo as well. So folks had the opportunity to get in these trucks and drive them around. I didn't get the chance to do that, but I know my CalStart team colleagues did, and so they can share their experience on that. But they, they were able to do a drive. Ride one of those electric trucks, and actually also I wanted to point you one of the bottom pictures, you see a charger there, a black charger. That's actually an MCS. We got to see first in person a megawatt charging system, which is one of the chargers that are being talked about for this project. So it was really exciting to see one firsthand after like reading about it, and it was cool to see one firsthand. Next slide, please. And then one of the things that also took place in one of the plenary sessions was the unveiling of this market brief, which is the state of sustainable fleets for 2023. And so the newly released market brief covers major trends and developments in the clean commercial transportation sector across the vehicle, fuel, and infrastructure segments from the past year. And I highlighted some of key findings and predictions that from this market brief. And once I'm done, I'm actually going to provide the link where you can all download and access this report. It's a pretty long report, but one of the biggest pieces they talked about was just the funding. Last year's market brief actually reported that there was a historic uptick in an average of $3 billion annually in public incentive funding in the zero emission vehicle space. It is now expected, it was announced with this briefing, that will increase to now $32 billion annually for the next 4 to 5 years, much of it with an emphasis on building out the zero emissions vehicle market. So just a huge amount of investment that you're going to start seeing, right, on the public side of things, but also on the private side of things as well. Excuse me. Another key finding that you'll see is just the prediction of the phasing out of like just diesel development for many of the OEMs, right? And just adoption, an expansion of adoption of state level zero emission vehicle mandates that we'll continue to see with other states. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to point out, if folks are interested and want to attend next year, it was announced that it's going to be in Las Vegas. So it should be a fun one. Just wanted to let folks know in case you want to plan ahead, want to increase your learning in this space. I know I do, right? And this is a great opportunity to do so, to gather lots of great information and updates and see the technology firsthand. This is one of the great conferences in this industry and sector to attend. So just wanted to give you all a heads up next May in Vegas. But yeah, I wanted to see if there's any one of my CalSTAR team members wanted to add anything on this piece. All right.
Hey,
well,
Giovanni, just wanted to say that, it was a really neat experience for us. Grid Alternatives has spent many, many years on the solar side of things, right? And so we're always trying to make the connection, whether it's solar and battery storage, now into charging infrastructure and trucks. I never thought that I would be at this type of an event. So it was really cool to just see the technology that's taking place right now. So I believe that we're all in the right place. We are all going to be contributing to this effort. And so I know I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about Vegas too, and being at the next convention there. But no, seriously, this is a really interesting time for not only Grid Alternatives, but for I'm sure for CalSTART, for for all of our partners. And so I hope that you're all excited as well. There's some things that are happening that are just at this pace that we're just trying to hang on now. So but it's all good. It's all good. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stella. And with that, I'll kick it over to my colleagues over at CalSTART.
Great. Thank you, Giovanni. So we're going to go over just some definition of what it means to have community resilience, how it relates to the eTruck project, and then we'll follow it up with just a discussion on this. So to start off, community resilience. So this means the capacity of communities to survive, adapt, and thrive in the face of chronic stresses and acute shocks, such as severe weather events caused by climate change. And boosting resilience, community resilience means strengthening communities and enhancing their health in a way that it reduces the negative impacts of challenges, both present and future. And by improving community resilience, it can lead to promoting the many systems that contributes to a community's overall health. And that comes in the form of disaster preparedness planning, community-focused health systems, and in general, social connectedness within the community. Next slide, please. Can you skip this slide? Okay, so community resilience in eTruck. The CEC has highlighted community energy resilience as one of its energy equity indicators alongside access and investment, and developed under SB 350, and it includes energy reliability, energy affordability, health, and safety. And within the eTruck project, we aim to bring together overall community resilience to disturbances and natural disasters, and energy resilience in general. And this is a major benefit of the installation of the new higher power infrastructure and the supporting grid improvements needed. And then I'll pass it on to Michael.
Thanks, Tuan and Gia. So we just wanted to, we've increasingly been seeing this in general as an important priority for the CEC and in general discussions around high power charging projects. So I wanted to make a little time to highlight this and also query the group here if this discussion is resonating with any of anyone here on the call in terms of what are particular resiliency challenges that we see or that you're perhaps seeing as important to address an eTruck in general. And I've outlined, or actually thanks for pulling up the slide. Here's some of the things that the CEC has identified. So that's just an open question. If anybody has input. We're also in general trying to make more of the connection of the vehicle component to the grid infrastructure improvements that will be attending the project. As you can see from Jack's presentation, the coordination that's involved in that is pretty significant, and also has a lot of various community benefits. So we're increasingly just sensitive to this category of understanding where challenges might be, where opportunities might be. If there are any comments, or this is just thought provoking, we can always you can feel free to send feedback as we go here. We wanted to highlight this pretty early in the game here as we're thinking about the project. Yeah, if there's no comments, I think we can move on. Maybe that might just be best. We have a lot of other things to actually continue, but we did want to put this out there as a general thing that we're going to be considering in future CTAC meetings as well.
I actually just raised my hand.
Oh, thanks. Great. Nancy, yes.
Sure, no worries. Just to mention very briefly, and one of my colleagues, Eileen Quinn, is also here, and I was just asking her in the chat, but we've been working through the SoCal Regional Energy Network on some energy resiliency action plans with 3 of our cities. Are small. We're in Southeast LA County, so we've got some Sella cities, Southeast LA cities. And I was just asking her if I'm not sure if that work has looked at all at vehicle charging as an aspect, but what it is doing is trying to identify what characteristics a community resiliency hub could have. So we're kind of looking at that and gathering community input on what residents might like to see. Not to put you on the spot, Eileen, but if I got anything wrong there or something that you wanted to add, just wanted to ask if you want to do that. Otherwise, just to raise that, that's a little bit of work we're doing within Gateway that could maybe attach to this at some point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so.
Thank
yeah.
you, Nancy. Yeah, that's pretty, yeah, the ERAP program or initiative is kind of more broadly about energy reliability. It focuses a lot on community resilience centers, so kind of like these cooling centers. So we did have to kind of look into whether the grid can handle, you know, extreme heat events is what we really focused on. But it doesn't really focus so much on vehicle charging, but definitely like a more broad kind of energy resilience atmosphere.
That's great, Eileen. Yeah, I wonder if this is very kind of nascent. So I'm just increasingly wondering if that these types of connections may be possible, I guess, in some way. And so I'd be really interested to see if there is how that's developing.
Yeah, we have a lot of, so we went through a process where we selected several sites for each city for the community members based on how appropriate they were for a community resilience center. So a lot of factors went into whether these sites were appropriate, right? So one of them was reliability on the electric grid, for example. So we do have those data and we did look into this. And then the community engagement aspect was that we are planning to ask community members via a survey which one of the potential sites they would prefer as a community resilience center. So kind of trying to integrate this idea of reliability, of, you know, resilience and community engagement.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, it sounds like maybe we need to follow up a little bit with you about that and just ask more what you're doing, if that's okay. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Yeah. Michael, just real quick, and Nancy, did you just want to mention just a little bit more about SB 671, just to the group at large, if you could? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
I see Commissioner Badejo has her hand up, and it may be more relevant to this topic because SB 671 is a little bit off topic. So I just want to recognize the order.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Badejo.
Oh, no, all is well. I just wanted to say that you are on the right track with this one. Watts Clean Air, we currently have a resiliency hub grant at a church in Compton, which is 1 block adjacent to the Alameda corridor. And that's exactly where I am because they have an alley also, and it's easy for trucks to come through. And so I'm working on getting them to put a charging station there. And so I invite, we're gonna soon be surveying the community and having workshops. And so I will also like to invite you there, and I can share the information coming up.
Perfect.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
I can briefly mention SB 671 just because it's an effort that I could see there being some connection and relationship at some point. So SB 671 was a state bill by Senator Lino Gonzalez, who now chairs the Senate Transportation Committee in Sacramento. And the goal of this bill, which passed a couple of years ago, was to identify the top most polluting freight corridors in the state and prioritize them for some kind of further attention. I can only assume and hope that it's going to be some kind of funding intervention to clean up those, the pollution with cleaner vehicles and cleaner trucks. So just process-wise, the staff of the California Transportation Commission has been carrying out that assessment. I'm pretty sure CalSTART is part of that working group. They've got a very broad statewide working group on the effort now. That I've been active in. And just to point out that I want to say in October of this year, they're going to be making their final report to the state legislature. So just in terms of the timing, I think it could be very, just very relevant for the work going on in this project. And hopefully, there's some attention that can be and priority that can be given to some of the areas in our region, like the 710 corridor, that definitely need these cleaner vehicles rolled out ASAP.
Absolutely.
So just want to mention it in this context too, so you guys can keep an eye on it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the moment,
Nancy. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Any other comments? Let me know. I think we can, where are we on time? I think we can move on if we want. This is definitely, again, just a kind of beginning conversation about this particular topic. And then, yeah, those links, especially to the update of the ZEV freight corridors, definitely really important for this project. So thanks for mentioning.
Michael, I see Jackie has her hand up, I believe, and then there's a comment. 1 second, and then there's a comment. It says, "I'd like to name that there should be another bubble added, community informed, to our slide here, or to the whole effort, right?" And this is from Jocelyn Del Rio at East Yards. So
great,
very good suggestion. Thank you, Jocelyn. And then Jackie, did you have another question or?
It was a leftover, but with that last statement, I would like to also add that it's important for the governmental players at that level to participate and be informed. I've been in Compton, and I know that they're trying to see if they can even get staff to attend these meetings, but I am keeping them informed as well.
Yeah, I've been very connected to that particular process, but I think, yeah, distributing as we go forward through the rest of the year, I think maybe making sure this group is also informed of where those designations will be and why they're happening and how the conversation is evolving around it. Because I know also the CEC is also involved. There's many people sort of involved in this designation.
Right.
And this project will support, that as a project. And so, yeah, I think we can maybe have some more tracking of that. I think in these meetings, maybe for the next one, we'll be sure to bring together information on what's going on there.
Thank you. And I wanted to quickly add that it's important not just for them to just be aware of what's going on, but also they have communications with the community and can also spread the information accordingly. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can work this into our, some of the partners that we're in contact with through this project. That's a great idea.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. So we have 15 minutes left, and we could, do either go into some of the discussion questions that are prepped or go into Q&A or a little bit of both. What do you think, Michael?
We could go into Q&A, I think, and just open it out more. I think we got some things on the table in terms of resiliency. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move over then to Q&A and see before we close it out, just see if there's any last remaining questions that folks have on anything that we talked about or covered during this meeting. Just want to be able to make sure we have that space for you all. So yeah, any questions?
Looks like it's all good.
Okay, well, anything comes to mind, I know, oh, I think there's something. What are some ways eTruck can leverage resources to support more resiliency efforts?
Mm.
Great
Yeah,
question, Michael.
Yeah, that's a major question that I have. I'll throw that back to the group. I mean, one of the great things about the project in particular is the focus on high power charging. So the grid upgrades that are going to be necessary to do that will be significant. I mean, it's not just that certain, in general, that there's a dual sort of focus to the energy side of this particular project. The one is that there's going to be grid upgrades to support ZEV electrification in general, but then also there's going to be ones that are, I mean, the focus on high power charging makes those upgrades more, well, more intense, I guess you could put it that way. And so in terms of the amount of infrastructure needed, and then in our terms of our regional deployment plan, these will be, positioned across. So we're doing this at the test sites the 2 test sites that we have right now, then also across the region, planning for those. And so there is an opportunity to, anyway, bring a higher power grid upgrade as well. Just wanted to point that out to the group.
And I wanted to also add from our standpoint, like at our last WEDAC meeting, the Workforce Advisory Committee meeting, I believe that I mentioned that we were working with some of our partners already, partners like Lacey, like the Miguel Contreras Foundation, my WorkSource Center, and a couple other organizations. And we're talking about how we might be able to create future curriculums that will just basically create training paths for folks that want to enter into clean transportation jobs. And so, we're not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but we're really trying to leverage all of those resources, all of the partners here, to create something that addresses the gaps between, let's say, a program like Grid Alternatives that trains folks on installing solar, right, to the gap between that to entering a pre-apprenticeship or an apprenticeship program with one of our local unions. So that's a big nut to crack. Because there's a lot of programs out there. Tuan mentioned that we organized all of these different programs together. You'll find them on the eTruck website, and I don't know if anybody can put the link there so folks can see the list of the different programs that are available out there. When we started putting this together, people said, wow, this is amazing. We had no idea that there were that many programs out there. It's great, but how do you connect all of those so that somebody that's starting here at point A then goes to point C and point G and X, right? And so they're creating they're building their skills, their knowledge, their capabilities so that they can easily jump into one of these jobs. So that's what we're trying to do from a workforce standpoint and from leveraging our resources standpoint.
Another thing that I would just add to, the question that was posed, right, from Commissioner Verdejo and also just Michael's comments on how we can leverage, right, eTruck resources, right, to support resiliency efforts. I mean, something to look into is and I'm not an expert at this, right, but I've been seeing a lot, and this came across a lot at last week's conference as well, and around bidirectional charging. And I think Yazi brought something up earlier with the Lacey presentation. So there's the evolution of that, right? Like being the next thing in this sector, and how you could get, just cars that are sitting could get electricity back into the grid with this bi-directional charging technology. And so who knows, in a couple of years from now, with the different evolutions of the technology, maybe that could be something that's integrated and embedded into what we're doing in the e-truck project. I'm not sure, right? But that's a possibility, right? So I just wanted to kind of mention that, right? And as there's a lot happening in that, and posting something that I came across recently on bidirectional charging, if folks just want to look into it on their own, right? But that's something that came to mind with that question that Commissioner Badejo brought up, right? And so as the evolution is evolving, like there are these other kinds of opportunities as well. So just wanted to mention that. I want to acknowledge we also got a question in here from Danny Wu of where is exactly the center lab mentioned earlier being planned in the city of Pomona?
Yeah, we have a site so there's actually 3 sort of sites right at the moment, and then there'll be future ones that are being planned in our work with SCAG, and then with in our statewide deployment plan as part of eTruck. So the lab that is for testing that is being started and kicked off, that's for testing equipment that will be in the SCE facility in Pomona. And that I'll get the exact address here in a second, but I can get back to you with that. Then we have 2 sites, one in one in Fontana, one in closer to San Bernardino, and those are the actual truck charging sites that we're starting with to do initial deployment and learn more from on-site experience. And then further, we'll be working with SCAG to talk about oh yeah, there you go, great, thanks Jordan. Sorry. And we'll be doing work to plan for ones across the region with SCAG, highlight areas that would be potential locations for deployment. And from there, in phase 2 of eTruck, we'll be working at the state level and finding sites at the state level for the CEC. So TBD on those other ones, but the 3 locations on mentioned here for the technical center, and then the 2 actual deployments of the infrastructure. Yeah, Fontana and over in San Bernardino. I'll get you the addresses.
Awesome, thank you. I don't see any more raised hands or questions in the chat. So if anything else comes to mind for folks, feel free to send us a message, reach out to us. And oh, there is something from Yazi there.
Sorry, I was just curious
go for
about.
It. Just saw it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just curious about if those sites are using like local labor to install the charging, and if there's like an educational or curriculum associated like with them. I know Grid has done such a good job with the workforce training and building up like a student curriculum for solar installation. I'm just curious if we're thinking about if you all have done that already for these sites, and I apologize if that's already been discussed, but it would be good to get more information.
Yeah, I can look further into that. We have contractors working. Prince and McDonald is one of them, but we have others as well working on the sites. Actually, work on the building out of them, and so though actually, I'll just get a precise answer and get back to you on that if that is good. But great point.
Yeah, that would be great. I know there are a couple of high road training partnerships as well. One is located at Port of LA, and another one's just launched this past year in the Inland Empire on helping individuals and individual logistics tenants and cities and just all the labor unions to train the workforce on this. So anything we can do to show them that the High Road Training Partnership, like these sites are in your region and they're being studied and funded by CEC and pushed by CalSTART and Grid, that would be fantastic. And we can talk offline on that. And I know they're developing a cohort of workers to get educated on zero emissions at warehouses. So just good information here today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yazi, for that. And yeah, Michael will get you that information, and anything else that pops up, let us know. Anyone else, any other questions, do let us know. I see we're running up on time here, so I'm going to ask if we could go to the next slide just to close us out here with next steps. And thank you, Yazi. I'll make sure as well that we get your email to Michael. And so wanted to announce, right, our next quarterly meeting is scheduled for August 8th. Everyone should already have that calendar invite. If you don't have it, please let me know so we send that over to you. As Tuan alluded to earlier, we are going to launch our webinar series with a ZEV 101 for next month, and this is intended to be open just to the public, right? So not just for our CTAC and WEDAC members. We really want to start this by spreading it to the masses, and we really are going to ask our partners to see if you all could help spread the word on this webinar. And we'll provide you with a little blurb and graphic to help push it out on social media, e-blast, et cetera. But this is intended to be for everyone, and not just folks in the industry or who are part of these types of advisory committees. And so this is as part of our sort of launching our education series and community engagement is via this webinar, right? And so we'll have other topics to come, but we're going to start it off with ZEV 101 next month. And then as always, we'll follow up with a copy of the presentation, copy of Lacey's presentation, the meeting summary notes as well for everyone, and the link to the recording that you all could rewatch at your leisure, and or provide it to some of your colleagues or partners that may have missed today's meeting. And again, any questions that come up, feel free to reach out. We're happy to follow up and continue our partnership and collaboration moving forward. Once again, I just want to thank you all. Next slide, I just want to provide our emails there that, as you can see there, for the Grid team, EPRI, as well as the CalSTART team. And just want to thank you all for your time, for joining us today. And wishing you all a productive rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. There's one more Cajun Mary for me. I'm in New Orleans right now. So goodbye. Good luck. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Already.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.